Beau is Afraid. Hot damn, is that a movie. For those of you who don't know, Beau is Afraid. This is directed by Ari Aster. His third directorial film with A24. His first movie, Hereditary. Horror classic. Modern horror classic. There's no other way of putting it. It's one of the greatest horror movies to come out in recent years. It took everyone by storm. Everyone I know loves this movie. Everyone's like, what the fuck is that? That movie slapped hard. Everything about Hereditary is perfect. I honestly think it's one of the best movies of the past 10 years. That's no exaggeration. It is a masterfully done movie. Excellent performances with Toni Collette and Gabrielle Byrne. The whole cast is perfect. The cinematography is perfect. The scares, that fucking one shot of Toni Collette just like staying still on the fucking ceiling like that. That's perfect. Then you have Midsommar. And when Midsommar came out, I was not that big into it. I thought, like, okay, it's something we've seen before, like a cult gone wrong. It was Wicker Man, it was Cannibal Holocaust, it was stuff we've seen before. And I feel like the more time goes by, the more I like the movie. And I'll tell you why. Because this movie, it's not a guy movie, it's a girl movie. That's what I started realizing. Because I started talking to all my friends, and I noticed that all the guys, they're like, it's alright. And all the girls are like, dude, this is awesome. And it's kind of like a breakup revenge movie is what I like started to kind of pick up on. And it connected more with the female audience in my personal life anyway. So just through that perspective, I changed my perspective on the film. And I was like, you know what? That Midsommar did something special that most horror movies don't do. So Midsommar, initially, I was like, okay, it's fine. It's not Hereditary, and I still don't think it's Hereditary, but it did manage to do something special in its own right. It is a more mainstream movie. Mainstream, not that mainstream. There's, like, heads exploding and shit, but it's more accessible than Hereditary. And now we're at Beau is Afraid, which is, hands down, Ari Aster's least accessible movie, and also his most grandiose movie at the same time, which is unusual. Usually when someone goes more experimental, budgets come down. Not this movie. Ari Aster really had free reign to do whatever the fuck he wanted, and was given tons of money to do whatever his heart desires. He also has a big name attached to this movie, unlike his previous movies where, yes, Toni Collette's a well-known actress, but not nearly on the level of a Joaquin Phoenix. Same can be said with Florence Pugh in Midsommar. And this movie, when it came out, it did abysmal, basically. Because of that, it's not very inaccessible movie. A lot of people are just not gonna get this movie. Not because of their lack of intellect, but this is a very, very random movie. Beau is Afraid follows Joaquin Phoenix's character, Beau, and he finds out that his mother passed away. And he has to go to her funeral, but a lot of shit ensues. That's the best I can do to sum up the movie. Like I said, it's a very random movie. If you're going in expecting Hereditary or Midsommar, it's not that. Get that out of your fucking brain. It's not that. It's not a horror movie. It's a horror comedy, maybe, but it's not gonna fucking keep you up at night like Hereditary or Midsommar. When I went to see Midsommar, I was with my sister, and our plan was to go see the movie and go to Kintan Ramen after and eat some noodles. The latter part didn't happen because we were so disgusted and traumatized. That's not the case for Beau is Afraid. If you're fucking shaking in your little boots after this movie, you have problems. But it does give you a certain sense of discomfort, a certain sense of anxiety, and it works on that kind of paranoia aspect, not as much on the pure horror. So if you walk into this movie expecting a horror movie, get that out of your brain. It's a horror comedy, flat out. The best comparison I can do is that Beau is Afraid is a feature-length version of Courage the Cowardly Dog. There's this show on Cartoon Network that used to play in the day. I used to watch it religiously. It was one of my favorite shows. It was called Courage the Cowardly Dog, and it was just like this very cowardly dog And every episode he's confronted with a new threat that was like very paranormal or just a slasher or just like it was a lot of homages to the horror genre, and at the center of it you had this very cowardly dog. Ah! He'd scream like that. Beau is Afraid is a Jewish version of Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's like as if Woody Allen made an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. And I think that's what works for me, is I kind of like that premise of this cowardly character stumbling his way into random scenarios that are very freaky and weird and absurd, and he's like the biggest coward. It kind of worked for me on that respect. So walk into this movie expecting an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. Other comparisons I can make is reminded me a lot of a Greek play or a Greek story. It reminded me a lot of Homer's Odyssey, and when I talk about spoilers, I'm going to talk about that more and which details reminded me of Homer's Odyssey. And lastly, I got a bit of Synecdoche, New York in the film. That kind of Jewish guilt theme, that kind of theme of paranoia. You're following a character who's a bit of a hypochondriac. So all of those kinds of movies melted together into Beau is Afraid. This is Ari Aster's weakest movie. I don't think it's a controversial opinion at this point. A lot of people think that. It's definitely a weaker film from Ari Aster. Again, Midsommar grew on me as time went by, and I think this movie is going to grow on me as time goes by as well. So maybe it might find itself going above Midsommar in the future. It's definitely not going to reach Hereditary in my mind. But what worked about the movie was the set pieces. Like I said, this is like just a cowardly guy finding himself in random scenarios. Some of those really stuck out as being either horrifying with respect to the theme of the film and the tone, and some are just like really beautiful to watch. Ari Aster really knows how to get the best out of his cinematography, get the best out of the production design, get the best out of everything. The first portion of this movie is solid as fuck. Until he leaves his apartment, that was all masterfully done. The movie was shot in Montreal. I knew about it because I've heard rumblings that it was shot in Montreal. I actually recognized one of the people in this movie. Yeah, it's really well crafted. And that kind of vibe of like paranoia is really expressed well in that opening. As the movie progresses, it gradually lost me. Other things that worked, some of the characters in here are really fun. Nathan Lane is in the movie. In my opinion, he steals the show. The movie is very funny. My theater was laughing pretty consistently throughout the movie. It's gonna be the popular thing to say, like, oh, my theater walked out on the movie. That wasn't the case with my theater. My theater was pretty interactive with the film, laughing along. A lot of audible what the fucks, me included. I screamed what the fuck at a certain point. So I think it does work when it comes to its entertainment. I was entertained throughout, despite it being a 3-hour long movie. Where the movie loses me is that it's so random that all stakes feel decreased. Going back to Courage the Cowardly Dog, every episode you kind of feel like this guy is fucked. But I feel like there's so many red herrings in the movie, so many Deus Ex Machina in the movie, that you kind of lose a sense of peril for the main character. And the randomness is kind of what makes the movie shine, but it's also what draws me back from enjoying this movie more than I did. I also think the character of Beau is a little one-note. I'm comparing him to a cartoon character, which goes to show that he's not the most fleshed-out character. Compare that to Toni Collette in Hereditary, who's a very fleshed-out character. You get behind her. Or even in Midsommar, you understand everyone's motivations very well. I feel like Joaquin's character goes through an arc, but I didn't really buy the arc. And I feel like, again, if that movie was less random, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But as it stands, it's just so random that I felt like he's just gonna overcome whatever scenario. That's all I'm gonna say for non-spoilers. I have my rating down below. Take that as you will. If you want to stick around for spoilers, stick around. So I'm going to talk about individual things that I really enjoyed in the movie. Firstly, when I'm talking about that opening, the setting in Montreal, everyone on the street is such a fucking weird character. The guy with the face tattoos and the tattooed eyeballs, He's the guy that I've seen in the street quite often because I live close to Montreal and I've seen him walking around a few times. And I recognized Montreal very well. It really felt like Montreal. Montreal is not too far off from the Montreal depicted in this movie. And the humor of that beginning was so dark. The one part I really liked is there's like a guy who's gonna commit suicide and everyone's filming him and like, hey, we're trying to get him to jump off the building, man. And it really creates a world that you're watching what Joaquin Phoenix's character is witnessing. Is this reality? Probably not, but it's his reality. And that's what I thought really worked in the movie. And the whole movie is through the perspective of Beau. That really creates a unique environment. My favorite moment of the movie is when he goes to the theater, like that little theater troupe that plays outside in the forest, and he sees kind of like his life flash before him, and he has a family and stuff like that. That's one of the parts that reminded me of Homer's Odyssey a lot. When he gets tempted by the woman who used to work with his mother and they're about to have sex, that kind of reminded me of the sirens in Homer's Odyssey, the mermaids. So there are those elements, and it does follow the hero's journey quite to a T. So it does feel like that kind of Greek play and that kind of adventure. The director said that this movie is Jewish Lord of the Rings, and you definitely feel that. It's a guy who's going on a journey to his mother's funeral, and he's stopping at every possible point. But some of the things I mean that are like just totally random. That giant fucking cock. What was that? Why was that in the movie? I don't know. I feel like there are moments like that where it's just like an absurd thing that happens just for the sake of it happening. Yeah, it just created more questions than answers. How did it fit into his mother? Ha! That mama got a loose fucking pussy, bro. Oh no. This is a movie about guilt, a movie about paranoia, and you're really witnessing the world through the eyes of someone who might have like a clinical anxiety disorder. And as for that, it really worked in the movie. I really felt like I had like a constant sense of anxiety, like as if I was watching a Safdie Brothers movie. That's what really works about the movie. And that's why I can't really say I didn't like the movie, because it did invoke an emotion out of me that rarely gets expressed in films. But as far as the narrative goes, it's all over the place. I really wish that Ari Aster wasn't so bogged down by the details. He really seems like a very immaculate director where every single thing must be perfect. But I feel like when it came to the script, it was very sloppy. The cinematography is very precise, the production design is very precise, the performances are precise, but that script just felt so sloppy and could have been shaved down a lot. And not even shaved down because of the runtime. I didn't really care about the runtime. Again, I was entertained throughout, but just more focused. Maybe like emphasize certain moments more than others. As it sits now, it was just like a very confusing watch. There are some good moments. It's a mess of a movie. Yeah, that's what I think of Beau is Afraid. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys around.